All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Evolving Practice podcast. I'm Dr. Bill Moss with my co-host,
Hi, I'm Dr. Sean Carey.
and we're excited for another episode. We actually did take a 1 week break in the midst of this, which we've only done one other time, which I would say it was 6 months ago, right around Christmas. So we're six
Yeah.
months since Christmas, and I think it
And
was
we had an
well.
even better reason, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, you could say we weren't prepared, but in addition, it was nice to just have a week off because I welcomed into the world my second child, my son, which is very exciting. And we've just been, you think you have time for other stuff, but if anything, I pushed more and more um, out of my space so I could just kind of be present in the last couple of weeks. So it was really nice to have that time. And it's leaving me feeling like energized in many different aspects. So
Congratulations on behalf of all our listeners. It was such a amazing thing.
thank you. Yeah. Yeah. It's fantastic. I mean, my daughter's 5, so this was the second round and a little bit of a surprise. We're not going to lie there. But it's been amazing. It's probably the biggest surprise has been watching how my daughter likes to be involved and how excited she is. And her first reaction, it was really funny. She when we told her she was going to be a big sister, she's like, "I don't think I'm ready. I think I should be 6 or 7." And this was like right after Christmas. It was really cute. She was like, "I don't think I'm ready. I can't do it. I think I should be 6 or 7." And then the next barrier was she wanted a sister. That's what she said. But now that her brother's here, she's like, "No, I definitely wanted a brother. This is the right thing." So it's cool to see how she's evolved in her experience, and she's super helpful. She's a little more independent, and it's been really fun to watch how she's responded to the whole thing, because very much she could not have the attention. She might feel like she's not receiving as much attention, and that could be something, but it hasn't been. So I'm sure it will be at some time.
Yeah.
I'm sure we're all humans.
Of course. But it's nice to have a great start and all that time together and that she's doing so well with it.
Yeah, there's benefits. Anybody that's not a more mature parent, there's definitely benefits of being older and being a parent. I
Yeah.
I know that when I was younger, I've done so much traveling, and I kind of just want to be home with my family and do the
Yeah.
service as a chiropractor and a healer and grow and vacation with my family. Like, I'm kind of cool with just being at home a lot more and just being with them, which it's very fascinating. Where I think when we're younger, we have this like, oh, I have all this opportunity and all this stuff to do. And it's like, I spent a bunch of years kind of running around doing things. And I'm in this point in my life where it feels like the right stage. So it's not as painful to be home more. Right.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Alchemist, where the
Mm.
person travels and has all these incredible experiences, and then at the end of the story comes home, and it's a totally different from a totally different place.
Yeah, that's my favorite book, by the way. That's like my
I love
favorite.
that book too.
I know we
Yeah.
did a book episode, but that's my most gifted book. I like to buy that for people and just
Yeah.
send it to them. Yeah,
I
it's
love
such a
it.
good one. I should read it again.
Yeah. You could read it to Ava.
She'd probably like it. Yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
one. I think it's appropriate, right? It's not like
Yeah.
inappropriate.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good book for kids, I think.
I think so. We'll check back on. I'll start reading into it.
Moving
Sometimes
moving Lord
we have to
Yeah.
edit things. Like we have those we have these classics, right? There's like a picture on one page and then it's text on the other, and it's like we've done 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Journey to the Center of the Earth, Black Beauty, and like you get to Black Beauty and they're like, killing the horse or something. We always have to
Yeah.
watch how we can edit the book. So I'll get back to you if it wasn't a book that needed edited. But I think it's
Okay.
a good story.
I love it.
Awesome. All right. Well, we're going to get into this episode, which is something I don't want to say we're experts on, but the perception of the world or the perception of us, of what we do, often is that, as chiropractors, that we are experts on natural ways of alleviating pain, right? I think that's a common, it's becoming less of the major thing in the public. They start to recognize that chiropractors have much more to do with the healing process than pain. But let's also not just short pain in this equation. Pain can be created or caused by so many things that aren't just physical.
Yeah.
Right. So in this episode, we're going to really explain, or we're going to explore the problem with a pain-free culture. That's one aspect. We're going to look at, what happens when you just completely try to avoid pain, because that's consequential. We become too comfortable. What does that mean? And we explore comfort in this podcast quite often. And then also maybe looking at how pain is more like a messenger. So let's get into this. What's been your experience with pain, from a practitioner standpoint, and maybe even from a personal standpoint?
Yeah, pain is something that it's really interesting because when people are like in severe pain, it affects all aspects of their life. But a lot of people, it's like they come to us and maybe they're like the pain's starting to become more significant for them. Maybe it's not severe, but
Mhm,
it's really starting to have that cumulative toll on their life. And oftentimes it's something that you watch. It's been going on for quite a long time before the person takes action. So
mhm,
maybe it's been going on for years and they're finally like, okay, I just can't take this anymore. It's getting worse over this long period of time. So I think in many ways, pain is it's something very valuable because it gets people to take action.
mhm,
And if people didn't have pain, they would just pretty much live the same way. They wouldn't get those warning signals until it was just way too late oftentimes. So I think pain is it can be a huge ally in many ways. I
mm,
think that the difficulty for people comes in that they try to run away from their pain.
mm,
They try to shut pain out. They think that pain is this experience that we're not supposed to have as human beings. Like you're just not supposed to be in pain ever.
mm.
And without understanding that, yeah, the pain is a messenger. Like it is the warning light in the car. It's there to let you know when something is something needs your attention. Emotionally, I think that people can also, like, they don't know what to do with their pain. Oftentimes, that can be kind of one of the most damaging things. Is they don't know what to do, and they may turn to addiction. They might just numb out or withdraw. But it's this not knowing what to do with pain that I think is a bigger issue.
Mm.
And it's really like, we have to address that piece of it because pain is a part of life.
Yeah, that's a good point. Even I'm going to use a kind of a very relevant example. As my wife ended up with a C-section, and
Mm.
that's pretty major surgery that requires recovery. And right after that recovery, you're taking care of a child, but you also have to take care of the child and move, and there's a natural amount of pain that's to be expected, right? And nobody would deny that. And it's probably peaks a couple days afterwards. And with almost anything, when there's breaking down in the body, there's a delayed response where the pain is at its greatest. But when you know that, you don't have to try to get rid of it so much. You can understand that you're going through it, right? And it's kind
Yeah.
of like the tear down with the working out is if you don't know that you're going to experience pain while working out, it would be incredibly shocking to you
Yeah.
when you're doing this effort that you're going to have pain. But you survive that and experience this discomfort, which can even come in a very delayed response, 48, 72 hours for some people. But understanding that path of progression of what the pain's going to be like can actually make a lot of sense. And that's where, the healing process, even looking at Lauren and ups and downs, it's like, it's going to get worse for a couple days and then it
Yeah.
should get better. And if it's not getting better, well, then we need to take a look at it. And it's not necessarily, quote, her fault. It's like, what else is going on or what else is underlying? And that's not a bad question to ask. Like, it's good to start
Yeah.
asking questions when you're in pain. That's probably one of the most guiding factors.
Right.
And whenever I talk about, chiropractic specifically at like a networking group, sometimes I'll ask the group, like, how many of you have experienced pain in the last year? And
Mm.
everyone's experienced pain in the last year. Everyone will raise their hand. So that's not a motivating factor to come see us, right? That's not enough to just have pain.
Yeah.
It's really when the pain starts to interfere with something on a regular basis where people can't tolerate that regularity, that we need to look deeper, and maybe it's time to do something about it.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, and it's something that is, as human beings, we can all relate to that. Like we can all understand what it means when somebody's in pain. We can all, really kind of tap into that compassion because everybody has experienced pain.
Mm,
So it is something that can really unite us and help us even tap into deeper levels of spiritual compassion and love and empathy and unity, togetherness, all those things. But I think pain really it is a messenger.
mm,
Ultimately, if we boil it down, and it is the asking the questions like you're talking about, as far as why is this pain here? One thing that I like to do for myself to distinguish between more like physical pain and other types of pain, because you might have, like, say, shoulder pain that's connected to some emotion that you had from the past. As
mm,
like, when did this, like, when is this coming from? Like, what's going on, but when is it? And is there anything that pops into my mind if when I like focus on that pain?
mm,
Because if you start doing that, you might be surprised, like, oh, maybe you're, it's 10, you feel and tap into this pain. And at the same time, you have this memory of like 10 years ago, the loss of a loved one. Something like that. So
mhm,
it can be this way to excavate the intertwined layers of pain.
mm.
I think is really valuable.
Yeah, and that is a something that happens for people. Some people are more probably aware that pain can go away because they addressed an issue, right? I had a
Yeah.
client who I was dealing with who had chronic discomfort, ups and downs, and she did okay with chiropractic, and she'd have some ups and downs, and she was doing wellness, and she was a physical, kind of like a body pump instructor,
Mm,
something like taught
yeah.
classes at a local gym. She was a little, probably in her mid 50s or so, but she was going to a class reunion, and I remember she came back, and there was somebody I think going into it, she was uncomfortable about going into it because there was something she wanted to address with another
Right.
individual. And she came back and she told me after she addressed it, she's like, my pain was like gone. It was she was
Wow.
like, I had a huge decrease in the pain, and it was gone. Now, some of her pain returned at a later date, and I'm not going to theorize or judge why that happened, but she personally noticed a huge difference in her outcome
Yeah.
and in how she felt in her body after she addressed an emotional issue, or a conflict that had risen like in high school or
Yeah.
college, and was never really faced. And I've had energy healing work where somebody's dealing with tremendous low back pain. I remember one of my chiropractic clients, and she tends to have a lot of dizziness and stuff when it's not just a nervous system kind of
Right.
issue. And whenever we do energy work with her, it's like her low back pain clears up and her vertigo calms down. And that's, part of her recipes, because there's something going on there that's much bigger than just this physical dysfunction that's occurring in her
Right.
system. And most people get way caught up in trying to address their physical
Yeah.
system in such a variety of ways that they almost kind of get stuck, and they can't see outside the box of it's only physical, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's, I mean, what people have been fed for our whole, childhood. At least in the generation that we grew up in, is that people have
Mhm.
always just equated, pain something bad, and you take painkillers, and
Yep.
if you have pain, just make it go away as fast as possible. And because of that, we're just missing out on so much deeper information and growth.
Hmm.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
if you just suppress the pain, if you just numb it out, you're missing on all the growth that it can help create.
Yeah, and on a non-extreme level, I'm just gonna say
Yeah.
something in general, is oftentimes when people have pain in a certain area in their physical body, they should actually be using that area more often. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
actually less often. And I'm not talking about a dislocation or something, super traumatic, but like a low level 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10 type of shoulder pain, or knee pain, or low back. Like, it's actually going to be most of the time, using that area in a more purposeful way tends to bring about healing. And even for myself, I might have used this example recently. I was having like a foot, but actually both
Yeah.
my feet were like really bugging me. And I just wasn't using them in a certain way. Like I wasn't doing calf jumps. I wasn't using my toes. I wasn't flexing my feet. I was in support way too much. It was bugging my knee. And then I was like, maybe I should avoid legs. And what I ended up doing was I did the opposite of what most people do, which is like, I'm going to ice this. I'm going to avoid that.
Yeah.
I actually focused on doing more things for my feet and for my knee. And within like a couple days, I just got better and better because I actually focused on bringing awareness to it. And what happens is we tend to turn off certain sensors when we don't use areas, and then they're almost like dormant and they don't support. So some of
Yeah.
the times it's like you needed to use that area to like wake it
Yeah.
up, to bring attention to it, to get it, to help the nervous system have awareness that like it can still do things and move. So I think a lot of times the conventional leave it alone, don't move it, avoid it, take rest and pain relief ends up in the long run suppressing the very thing that was needed to help it respond and repair in a much quicker, in a much more healthy, efficient way.
Yeah. I mean, that movement brings like blood flow, right? It moves the energy. When there's stuckness, really the best thing that you can do sometimes is to just create movement. So, and whether that being stuck in pain or stuck in some aspect of life, it's like you just need to get something moving. And
Mhm.
then from there, you can tweak the dials and change it. But I've never heard it described quite in that way. I think that's a brilliant way to describe what you just shared.
Well, sometimes I even describe like pain for people is, there's this idea of facilitation in the nervous system where it's like, um, to kind of anchor something in, you have to like teach the nerves
Yeah.
how to do something, and they can kind of get used to being in pain. So then they're almost like more wired to be in pain. And then to do something about it, to teach it how to be something different and be something more kind of helps kind of move the energy and shift the energy. And I think that's where the what is a problem and what kind of awareness is it giving us. You can kind of softly go into that. And in that,
Yeah.
I want to give that example is like when me for like the feet or the knees, when something starts showing up, I don't just like wreak havoc on my knee and my foot to like make it change. Right. I kind of like softly go
Yeah.
into exploring the nature of that. And I think that's like a really good approach whenever we're looking at like, why is my stomach uncomfortable? Am I
Yeah.
anxious? Is it something I ate? You have to like softly go into it because I see many people that just react and respond and treat immediately without kind of like
Yeah.
just slowing down to gather data. Like, and the stomach's a great one. Like your stomach can hurt because you're anxious. And that's a very
Yeah.
medically accepted reason. It could also hurt because you've ingested poison.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Two
Yeah.
things create a similar feeling that need to kind of be approached in a very different way.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's like it's why it's so important to have that relationship with pain to understand pain in your own life. So that you can pick up on those nuances because if you're just shutting it down and shutting it out, I mean like imagine if you didn't have a relationship with like hot or cold. It's almost like a primal aspect of human life. Like we
Yeah.
really want to be able to investigate that. Like because it's just like hot or cold. If it's too hot, we need to know that. If it's too cold, we need to know that because we need to take care of our bodies properly.
That's so
Pain is
good.
the same way.
Rudolf Steiner, he described like we have 12 senses and one of them was warmth. And he would
Mm,
describe like having, it's almost like a form of intelligence would be your
yeah,
understanding of your own warmth and how that, cultivates a healthy being. And so understanding when your hands and your feet are cold and when things are hot and cold, that's actually kind of like a skill. So,
mm,
omitting the relationship of pain, that's such a good way. Like I never quite quantified pain as like a relationship, but you do get to know it. And like as somebody
yeah,
who is a distance runner, is you have to start to understand your relationship with pushing into the pain and knowing when, and there's a lot of timing involved, right? It's not like the gas pedals at the
yeah,
floor when you start. You have to like understand this relationship of where and how you can push and what's left in your tank. So, I think athletes tend to develop greater capacity for understanding pain and experiencing and pushing beyond it and through it. But there's that fine line where you're pushing for performance and you're pushing into injury. And it's not necessarily natural to do that, but it does when we go into that extreme, which we like to talk about this. It's okay to blow up sometimes, right? Like, oh, I
Yeah.
pushed too hard, because then you understand, what the limit was, and then you can
Yeah.
kind of work more gently into that limit. But that's kind of necessary to have a relationship with pain, which is very healthy to have in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's really healthy. I think it's really necessary. And physical pain, emotional pain, spiritual pain, we need to be aware of those, because
Yeah.
all those pieces is like, maybe somebody's having spiritual pain because of a misunderstanding or not being something they're able to let go of. It's
Mm.
like you just need to have that awareness, because otherwise you're going to keep living with that pain. To switch gears a bit, one thing that I talk about with people who are in chronic pain a lot is just the importance of getting the inflammation down in their bodies. So
Mhm.
we live in a world that there's just so much inflammation all the time, because most of it really comes from diet. I think diet and stress.
Mhm.
And a simple thing that people can do if they're having chronic pain, especially if they have their joints swelling, if there's any type of visible inflammation in their face or stomach or anything like that, is really just start being more conscious of getting rid of any type of processed food,
Mm.
especially the most inflammatory foods, which are really like gluten and dairy are the top two.
Mhm.
Soy. Some people can't tolerate eggs. That's another thing that we need to know. But just like get rid of the processed stuff. Cut out grains, cut out dairy, cut out sugar. Give your body a little break for a while and just have meat, have vegetables, have fruit,
Mhm.
have some honey, have some salt. But it would really simplify it for your system, so it can just reduce the overall inflammatory load.
Yeah.
Because people like the first thing we go for if we experience pain typically in our society is anti-inflammatories like Aleve and aspirin and ibuprofen and those things. And those biochemical pathways that they work on, we call them anti-inflammatories because it's there to stop the inflammation from forming.
Mhm.
But one of the biggest like chronic sources of inflammation that we have is diet. So if you're in pain and you're eating processed stuff, like let the processed stuff go for a while, give your body a chance to heal. If you can get that baseline information from like a 7 to a 3, you're
Mhm.
going to have so much less physical pain. And that's just one of the things that's just really good for everybody to do, I think. Just because it's just the world we're living, the dietary consumption for most people is really geared towards massive inflammation. And
Yeah.
that's linked to so much chronic disease and dysfunction.
I agree. I think we overcomplicate a lot of the process of being healthier. I'm not saying just being healthy. Like people that have certain issues, they really need a lot of work to
Yeah.
overhaul their life to get there. But there are like these simple principles, and I love it. That's like my dietary talk is typically like, eat things that have one ingredient in them to
Yeah.
the greatest extent. And I'm not saying like there aren't, there's so much diet information. There's so much supplementation information. And now you have it coming from like influencers, thousands of influencers that are like edited,
Right.
like half of their bodies edited. And they're also taking a lot of supplements that maybe are a little suspect that you wouldn't
Yeah.
even want to put in your body. So it's like you have to decide like what do you need, what do you want this vehicle for. I think that's
Yeah.
also a great understanding for pain is, why do you want this to work well? What is the purpose of your physical body working well? And then like you said, that is the simplest way to like start to eliminate some inflammation, to also have like a commitment, because
Yeah.
what most people do is they like derail all their progress in a day, and they ride it on their feelings.
Yeah.
And this is the problem in the pain-free culture, is like if you're just trying to always be comfortable, like then you're only going by how you feel in a moment to get back to comfort, and then you actually
Yeah.
don't grow at all, right? The muscle doesn't get strengthened
Right.
at all. So I love how you said that if you stick to that like for 30 days or beyond, like the simple dietary
Yeah.
Sean Carey plan, uh you're gonna have less pain. You without a doubt will.
And like I know for myself, if I like say I did the reverse of it, like let's say tonight I went out and I just had a ton of Chinese food, loaded with MSG and gluten and those things.
Yeah.
And then for the next 2 days, I just like, but let's say I was at a conference and I was just sitting all day and not getting enough movement, like maybe not getting workouts or anything like that. If my diet was like that and then I wasn't getting enough movement, I would for sure be in so much pain.
Yeah.
And it's just because like it's like turning up that volume knob to 10 of inflammation in your system. So all these old injuries, just where there's a little bit of scar tissue here or there, or these different things, it's going to cause pain. But people don't always they don't always realize that. And when you just give your body a break, like what we're talking about, like just
Mhm.
give it a break, have those single ingredient foods. Your you'll start to be able to build that relationship with what feels good for your body too.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
because it's like you kind of need that window in the pain is sometimes so it's like you can just kind of see which way is you need to be able to have that balance between left and right to know what you need to do to like get back to center, if you will. If
Yeah.
it's just pain, pain, pain all the time, and you're never giving your body a break, you aren't going to know how your body responds to different things.
Yeah. And a lot of those changes, like you were kind of hinting towards, is you want to make them for any change that you're going to make to experience hopefully a decrease in pain. Is you want to give it a chance. You want to give it a
Yeah,
shot, right?
yeah,
And the interesting thing is people are willing to end up taking an over-the-counter medication for a much longer period of time than they thought they were going to be doing it, when all the while, if they would have, and that's not like a conscious commitment. You know what I'm going to
yeah,
do for the next year is I'm going to take the anti-inflammatory medication, and at that point, the medication will be good, will be done. But it doesn't work that way. It's like I
yeah,
started taking it because I wanted relief, and I experienced some relief, so therefore I kept taking it, and then I took more of it, and then all of a sudden you look back and you're like, I'm still taking it. But in that
yeah,
same period of time, if there was some maybe lifestyle choices to make, water, movement, simple diet, uh, there can be a lot. There can be a big change. It might take a longer period of time for the initial impact, but the long
yeah,
term impact is going to be um, is going to be much bigger. And listen, I feel like I experienced pain in the last year that I was like, oh my god, I'd give anything to not be in this type of pain. Right? Like I
right,
get,
yeah,
I'm a big baby. Whenever I'm sick, I'm like,
yeah,
you can't think about what's the saying? It's like a man that's well can like think of 1,000 things that he wants, but a person that's not well, they can only think of one thing
right,
essentially,
right, yeah,
and that's being well. So I've experienced that concept where you're like, I'd give anything to just be
yeah,
well right now.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that's something that so many people can relate to too, and have seen.
Yeah. So let's talk about this from a comfortable perspective regarding like spiritual development, right?
Yeah.
So, uh, there's no pain in developing as a spiritual being, right?
It's, I think in many ways it was like my greatest pain in life came from that.
Yeah.
But also the greatest growth too, right? Because it's like, again, people just want growth without pain.
Yeah.
But it was the pain that you didn't even realize was there. For me, it was like the pain of, probably feeling separate from God,
Mhm.
or anger or something like that at God, though, like that can create a lot of pain. But
Yeah.
yeah, the spiritual, like to be on a spiritual path, there will be like pain of the soul. That's part of it. It's just what we do with it. And ultimately, what I've learned is that we just really want to be able to like take that pain and give it back to God, give it back to the light, whatever, the angels, however it is that you want to organize that. But it's not like where we have to just process the pain internally all the time on a spiritual
Yeah.
level.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I know with some of the people I work with and some of my initiates, it's like deep down when we're looking at teaching, and I don't think anyone would deny this. I don't think business, entrepreneur people, like growth happens when you're pushing and it gets hard.
Yeah.
And to avoid the hard all the time is you're not going to actually get anywhere in almost any aspect of life. And it's like we can position that to understand, like if you're learning about yourself as a spiritual being and you're developing in that way that's more like God, you're going to have to understand the parts of you that aren't working, and
Right.
to hang on to them creates a lot of pain. Like the longer that
Yeah.
you hang on to aspects of the self that aren't for your own good, that are masks, they're personalities, and they're not the ones that you're aware of, it's going to be harder, when
Yeah.
you are willing to let go. And oftentimes when you pollute the self with more substances, alcohol, drugs, you distort your understanding of the self, which can make your understanding of your own, behaviors, thoughts, and progression much more challenging. So to do those things in conjunction with trying to know thyself makes the whole mess a lot harder and a lot more painful.
Yeah, and people, the one of the sneaky things with the ego is that people will do these different things and they won't realize they're doing it to avoid pain.
Right.
So it's like they might be like, yeah, I just want to have some drinks on Friday because it's Friday or whatever. It's it's a sunny day and it's like, okay, but maybe if you let yourself ask a little deeper, it's like there's often some type of discomfort that they're just wanting to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
And people are doing that all the time with drugs, with alcohol, with food, and it's a way that, like, if you're not aware that this is happening, it's just so easy for that cycle to continue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
Well,
like
I
the
think,
pain pills, right? Like it's like you just start, you're like, okay, like, oh, I have a headache again. Let's take that. It's like, oh, there's that feeling of discomfort again, and
yeah.
and I feel too challenged. I don't know what to do, so this will take some stress off.
Yeah. And being unwell does, some, I don't want to like blame people, right? But there is this level of when people are sick and they start to get well, right? I'm just using, let's even say a physical plane. It means that there's more potential, right?
Mm.
There's more potential in your life. If you can feel better, be better, express more, there's more potential for you. There's more opportunities. And when you are sick, when somebody is sick and they're anxious and they're in pain, there's less potential to go express in this world. And sometimes people don't realize that when they have the potential, they actually didn't want it. And I'm not saying everyone, but there are people that start to feel better and they run away from that because they started to experience the world in a way that showed them there is more potential. And they're like, I'm not
Yeah.
ready for that. I'm not ready to be well. That attention that I was getting, consciously or not, uh, I want and I need. So
Mm.
therefore, I'm going to stay here and I'm not going to go beyond it. And in the same way, spiritually, it's like, listen, you're stronger. You're greater than the bullshit. You're greater than your programs and your masks. And yet you start to see them and you're like, no, but I don't know what's out there. So therefore I'm not going to go into the unknown. And it happens a lot. And because it's kind of a scary place, right? When you get
Yeah.
used to being, I don't want to say like needy, but stuck, to be unstuck is a much scarier place for many people.
I was getting this vision while you were talking about it of like somebody in a prison cell, and then it's like the door is open, and it's like, okay, you can leave now, and they're like, wait, I don't want to anymore, and
Yeah.
it is very much like that, and it's like people can be scared of a new beginning, but it's happening, it's life, like the whole world is going through a new beginning right now in many ways. Like we have to be able to kind of like ride the wave, if you will,
Yeah.
connect with our intuition and see what the good potentials are that are unfolding. Because there is no such thing as standing still. Like
Mhm.
trying to stand still is probably the recipe for the most pain in a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's in summary, it's like there is an inertia in either direction, and you get to choose kind of how you're going to move and where in which direction that's gonna be. And you're not always gonna be so sure. And in fact, when you start walking down in a certain direction, um, you don't have to know the whole end of that story, right? If it's
Right.
gonna cause more suffering and pain. Because pain is like there is teaching within pain. Like you don't have to put your hand in on the stove to feel the burn to not do it again. But we all
Right.
get burned to some degree, some worse than the others, right? Some you run out in the summer and the blacktop's hot and you're like, whoa, I didn't know it was going to be that hot. But then you get on the
Yeah.
grass and you're fine. But other people, like, they put their hand in a fire and they get severely burned, and it stings all the same. And we kind of take that image inside, and it helps us with our learning, um, which, we can learn without severe pain. but
Yeah.
can we learn without completely? Not exactly.
Yeah, I think that the way to really kind of it's really like, if when we look at pain, we want to avoid unnecessary pain. Is
Okay.
what it comes down to. There's
Yeah.
like necessary pain and unnecessary pain.
Hmm.
Like, even when we were little kids, I don't know if you experienced this, but I had like growing pains at different times.
Mm.
Where it's like your legs would just ache because you're growing. It was like these nighttime aches that lasted for a while. And like, there is that piece. It's like there is just a certain amount of pain that we're going to go through. It's one of the first noble truths of Buddhism is
Mm.
that there is pain in this world. Like, there is
Mm.
suffering. It's part of the world. Our bodies will get sick. People we love, loved ones we know, will pass on. It's just a part of life. But within that, there's this trap where humans can get stuck into, as far as a lot of pain that is unnecessary.
Mhm.
It's not serving them. In fact, it's harming them, like you're talking about. They're less productive members of society, and less joy in their own life, because they're just bodies and souls and spirits are just holding on to too much pain.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we need to really look at, okay, like, what is this pain trying to teach us, or tell us? Like, if there's a message, is it because I'm eating too much processed food and it's causing a lot of inflammation? Is it because there's some type of injury that I need to go get help with by seeing a practitioner?
Mhm.
Is it an emotion, or something from the past? Is it something about my life that I need to change? Maybe like, if a marriage wasn't working, or like a job wasn't working, or something like that. Those situations can cause a lot of pain.
Mhm.
But just being able to, ask and start going through that process. And then you can let go of whatever the unnecessary pain is, like what's causing it, or just course correct.
Yeah, I love it. I think the letting go that you hinted on at the end is one of the biggest pieces. I think it doesn't always mean you need to do so many more things to get rid of this pain. In fact, I think a lot of times people need less in their lives to experience more fulfillment and joy. And that I'm not super astute to the Buddhist way, if you will, but that always seems to be like a principle that, like, kind of less is more. And if we're looking at some little steps that people can take, like you mentioned earlier, is for the diet, that's a very physical thing, but just simplify it. For the
Yeah.
mind, why is meditation so helpful? Because it simplifies. There's a difference between, I just read a really good book, I think it's near me, um, Don't Believe Everything You Think. And it really goes into this
Mm.
difference between thoughts and thinking, right? People that get stuck in thinking is this,
Yeah.
like, kind of repetitive um, self-generated way of just kind of almost like obsessing over something and just
Yeah.
rethinking. But having thoughts is not that is natural. Thoughts
Yeah.
come and they're effortless. They come, you have an awareness of them, you see them, you let them go, and there's a major difference. But if you're clouded if by thinking, it's going to create more mental and emotional kind of potentials
Yeah.
for suffering, if you will, because you're just perseverating you're perseverating in many ways in this mental world that can create these strong, powerful images for the self and in within the soul that will and can create more suffering. They really
Yeah.
can. When you just keep carrying around this imagery within the system, it tends to create more, quote, suffering, which often shows up in the form of pain.
Absolutely. And it's something that, as practitioners, I think one of the things that we have to, or not have to do, but it's really helpful to do when somebody is experiencing severe pain like that, because there is that tendency of the human mind to just perseverate on it. So
Hmm.
they'll want to, like, latch onto this, and then, obsess over the pain that they're experiencing.
Hmm.
And it's really like having to redirect the person and get them to move their mind in a more positive way. Like, the pain can be something that's going on, but we don't want to hyper focus on it.
Hmm.
So, redirecting that person, maybe there's a new, like, TV series, or maybe there's a book series, or some type of hobby that's not going to aggravate what's going on. But
Yeah.
this way that they can, like, engage their mind, and it's kind of like putting their mind on a different train track, if you will. So
Hmm.
it's just not so it's not actively making that pain worse.
Yeah.
because we know like physiologically with neuroscience, that's just, it's going to spike all the stress hormone, which is going to sensitize you to more pain. It's going to create more inflammation. It's going to cause more neurological wiring or neuroplasticity, like you were talking about earlier, where the brain becomes more efficient at firing pain signals. Like if that's all those, the cascade that goes wrong when we start hyper focusing on pain. So you need to be able to like redirect your mind on something else that's going to uplift you, that you're happy about. And it could be something silly, like it could be like a silly TV series, but just something that like hopefully makes you laugh, or just gets you engaged in a way that's gonna take your mind off what's going on.
Awesome. And I think one of the most powerful ways to kind of, get out of that, get out of the self, if you will, is to find community too.
Yeah.
Community is such a big predictor of happiness, healthy, having a healthy nature, longevity. And that's because there's a lot of things that happen within, the self chemically with different hormones. Um, we tend to have more purpose, connection, communication. Um, we can really kind of see ourselves better when we have community. And I think that's one of the best things. And I think it happens when people get stuck in, I've had a lot of older clients that lose a spouse and they're like, I was just taking care of them for so long and then I'm without them and now I'm suffering more. And they're like, I just need to get myself out of that cycle. And I think there's wisdom. There's a lot of older people that will see like, and I had one woman, she asked, if this gets better physically, do you think I can be happier? I mean, sure. She said, do you think this will handle some of the emotional things? And I go, well, if this was getting better, would you be more hopeful? That was my question. And she was like, yeah, without a doubt, I'd be more hopeful. And I go, well, I think that can help with that. I wasn't saying we were going to cure that, but I was just like, I wanted her to see the infinity loop that's connected to your physical pain and how when that can get better, you can become more hopeful. Because when we're in a sick state, we can't think about our purpose. We can't think about, the higher vision of our life. It's like we can only think about kind of the present moment, which is also, important place to be in our healing journey.
Yeah. Beautifully said.
Awesome. I love it. So this is a topic, we've dabbled with, but as chiropractors and as healers, why do people seek healing? It's because they're experiencing pain. For the most part, pain is a bigger motivator for individuals than pleasure. It just is. We can't flip that script all at once. Maybe it can change over time, but it's an important thing to recognize, to look at from multiple angles. And if anything, I feel like the strategy that you kind of uncovered is start to simplify it. If you're overdoing the quote treatment of the pain, maybe take a step back so you can become an observer of all of the activity and all the attention that you've given to it, and just start to step back from it so you can see it better. And I think you'll be able to do more with your pain and your suffering for yourself, so you can start to progress for your own greater good.
Thank you all so much for joining us. And, please share your thoughts and let us know anything. Let us know what episodes you've been enjoying the most and what conversations. But it's so nice to be here with you again.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. We look forward to continuing the streak. Maybe we'll take a break again around the holidays and Christmas because it's only 6 months away.
Yeah. Awesome.